February 19th, 1945, Ramree Island, Burma. British naturalist Bruce Wright stood at the edge of the mangrove swamps. Before him stretched 16 kilometers of marshland. Inside, approximately 1,000 Japanese soldiers. The sun was setting. What he would later call the most horrific slaughter by animals in history was about to begin. Ramree Island was a small patch of jungle off the coast of Burma. Strategically important. The British needed the airfield. The Japanese needed to hold their position. A week earlier, the landing had begun. The 26th Indian Infantry Division under British command. Against a Japanese garrison of roughly 1,000 soldiers. The fighting was fierce. The Japanese fought as they always did, to the last man. But by February 19th, it was clear. The island would fall. The Japanese command faced a choice: surrender, or retreat through the swamps to their lines on the mainland. They chose the swamps. Approximately 1,000 soldiers, wounded, exhausted, without supplies. They began moving at dusk. Before them lay 16 kilometers of mangrove swamps, water, mud, impenetrable vegetation. But they believed they could make it. The British surrounded the perimeter, set up posts, and waited. They knew the terrain. They knew what lived there. They knew about the crocodiles. The mangrove swamps of Ramree are among the most inhospitable places on Earth. Temperatures approaching 40 degrees Celsius, 100% humidity, brackish, murky water. Visibility is measured in meters. But the climate wasn't the main danger. These swamps were home to saltwater crocodiles, Crocodilus porosus, the largest reptiles on Earth. Adult specimens reach 7 meters in length, weighing over a ton, bite force of 3,700 pounds per square inch. For comparison, a lion's is around 650. A great white shark's is 4,000. The saltwater crocodile is stronger than almost any land predator. They hunt sharks, eat water buffalo whole, attack boats. There are documented cases of attacks on small vessels. They're territorial, aggressive, and hundreds of them inhabited the Ramree swamps. The Japanese didn't know this. They entered the water at sunset, in column formation, weapons held overhead. The wounded were carried on shoulders. Water reached their waists, sometimes their necks. Mud sucked at their feet. Mangrove roots caught on uniforms. Every step required effort. Ahead, only darkness and jungle sounds. The first attacks began almost immediately. The crocodiles sensed movement. The smell of blood from the wounded spread through the water. It was a signal. The first soldier disappeared silently, grabbed from behind, dragged underwater. A brief splash, then silence. The others didn't even notice at first. Then another, a scream, gunfire, panic. The Japanese realized they weren't alone in the water. A crocodile attacks from ambush. It lies motionless, only eyes and nostrils above water. In darkness, it's impossible to see. It waits, selects its victim, then strikes. The attack is instantaneous. Powerful jaws clamp onto the body. Then, the death roll. The crocodile spins around its axis underwater. This breaks bones, tears off limbs, drowns the victim. Humans don't survive. The Japanese fired into the water. Useless. Bullets disappeared into mud. Crocodiles attacked from below. By midnight, the attacks had become widespread. The smell of blood attracted dozens of reptiles. They converged from all parts of the swamp. Sounds, movement, human panic, all of it triggered their hunting instinct. The Japanese tried to stay in groups. It didn't help. Crocodiles attacked from the flanks, picked off stragglers, dragged the wounded underwater. Soldiers shot each other accidentally. In the darkness, it was impossible to distinguish who was where. Shouts in Japanese mixed with the bellowing of crocodiles. The bellow of a saltwater crocodile is the sound of primordial terror, low, guttural. It vibrates through water, audible for kilometers. That night, the swamps roared. Bruce Wright stood at a position 1 kilometer from the swamps. He was a naturalist, a wildlife specialist, attached to British forces as a consultant. He knew what would happen. He tried to warn the Japanese through loudspeakers. Surrender, before it's too late. No one came out. He wrote in his diary, That night, the Ramree swamps became the scene of the most horrific slaughter ever inflicted by animals upon humans. The cries of the wounded mixed with the bellowing of crocodiles and the sounds of gunfire. It didn't stop from sunset to dawn. British soldiers on the perimeter heard everything: gunshots, screams, splashing, growling. One officer later said, "I served in North Africa. I saw Monte Cassino. But that night, I still hear those sounds, in my sleep." Another soldier recorded, "We knew what was happening in there. We couldn't do anything. It was a slaughter." By 3 in the morning, the gunfire became sporadic. By 4, nearly ceased. By 5, the swamps were quiet. Only occasionally, a splash, a scream, silence. When the sun rose, the British began a cautious advance into the swamps. What they found is difficult to describe. Scraps of uniform on mangrove roots, weapons in the mud, helmets floating in water, blood on vegetation, crocodile tracks everywhere, massive prints in the silt, drag marks from bodies. They found approximately 20 Japanese soldiers alive. They sat on small patches of dry land, in shock. Some had lost their minds, muttering, unresponsive to commands. One soldier had spent the entire night in a tree. Below, crocodiles waited. By morning, he couldn't unclench his hands, cramps from the tension. Another tried to run at the sight of the British, thought they were hallucinations. They stopped him. He wept, repeated one word, "Wani," crocodiles. Of the roughly 1,000 Japanese soldiers who entered the swamps, approximately 20 survived. The rest disappeared. The British attempted to find bodies. They found several dozen, mutilated, partially consumed. Most bodies vanished without a trace. Crocodiles drag prey into deep holes underwater, store them there, eat them later. The exact death toll is impossible to establish. Bruce Wright estimated losses at approximately 900 men. Of these, the majority were crocodile victims. Some drowned, some died from wounds. But the primary cause of death was reptiles. This event made it into the Guinness Book of Records. The entry states, "The greatest disaster suffered from animals by humans in history." An officially registered record. Wright later wrote an article, then a chapter in a book. He described the details. Testimony from surviving Japanese, accounts from British soldiers. He wrote, "I saw much during this war, bombardments, assaults, hand-to-hand combat, but nothing compares to the slaughter in the Ramree swamps. Nature proved a more merciless killer than any army." Some historians later questioned the scale. They argued, perhaps some Japanese died from British fire, perhaps they drowned, perhaps the figures were exaggerated. But British Army documents confirm it. The UK National Archives, reports from the 26th Division, approximately 1,000 entered, approximately 20 emerged. Where were the rest? The surviving Japanese told the same story. Crocodiles, hundreds of crocodiles, attacking all night, impossible to flee, impossible to fight. One survivor, interrogated later, said, "We were prepared to die from bullets. We were ready to die from bayonets, but not like this, not from animals in the darkness." Another, "They were everywhere. You couldn't see them, only felt movement in the water. Then a comrade would disappear. A scream, that's all." A third, "I saw a crocodile grab an officer, dragged him under in seconds. The officer didn't even have time to scream, just disappeared." British soldiers also gave testimony. One sergeant, "In the morning we entered the swamps, found a rifle. Nearby, a helmet. 10 meters away, part of a uniform. All covered in blood. Nobody." Another, "The crocodiles weren't even afraid of us. We saw them on the shore. Enormous. They were sunbathing. Next to them lay remains." A medic, "We tried to help the wounded Japanese. One was missing a leg, torn off below the knee. The wound edges, ragged, as if bitten off. He died from shock and blood loss within an hour." Wright took measurements, found crocodile tracks over 6 meters long. This corresponds to a weight of 1 ton or more. He found an attack site. There was a depression in the silt, about 2 meters deep, 4 meters in diameter. A crocodile den. Inside, pieces of equipment, scraps of fabric, bones. He photographed it, documented it, sent a report to British Command. Command classified the details. Too horrific, too demoralizing. But the story leaked. Soldiers talked. Wright wrote. Journalists learned. By the war's end, the story of the Ramree swamps had become legend. The Japanese command never officially acknowledged this disaster. Their records state, the Ramree garrison perished during the breakout attempt. No details. The 20 surviving Japanese were taken prisoner. Most remained silent about that night. Some went insane. One committed suicide in a prisoner of war camp. The psychological trauma was absolute. One British doctor working with prisoners wrote, "These men experienced something that broke them. One woke every night screaming. Another refused to approach water, even to wash. A third drew crocodiles, over and over, hundreds of drawings." The local inhabitants of Ramree knew about the crocodiles. They never entered the swamps at night. Never. It was taboo. When the British asked guides if the swamps could be crossed, they answered, "During the day, perhaps. At night, death." The Japanese didn't ask, or didn't believe. After the war, Wright became a prominent naturalist, wrote several books about wildlife, but he rewrote the chapter on Ramree 3 times. He said, "I couldn't convey the horror. Words don't describe it. The sounds of that night." In 1968, he gave an interview. He was over 70. The journalist asked, "What was the most terrifying thing you saw in the war?" Wright answered without hesitation, "The Ramree swamps. February 1945. I watched nature devour an army." Saltwater crocodiles still inhabit the Ramree swamps. The island is now uninhabited. Locals avoid it. Fishermen sometimes see enormous reptiles near the shore, 7 meters, maybe larger. Old men say, "These are descendants of the ones that ate the Japanese." They remember, they're waiting. There's no scientific confirmation, but the legend persists. In 2013, a research team attempted to study the swamps, find remains, artifacts. They found rusted rifles, helmets, buttons from uniforms, and bones, many bones. Some were clearly human, with tooth marks, crocodile tooth marks. One archaeologist said, "We found confirmation, this happened. The scale is difficult to assess, but hundreds died here, without question." The investigation was closed, too dangerous. Crocodiles attacked the boat twice. The Ramree swamps remained untouched. The story of that night is a lesson about the nature of war, about how humans are not the apex of creation, about forces more ancient than armies. The Japanese soldiers were professionals, trained, armed, ready to die. But against saltwater crocodiles in their element, humans have no chance. Darkness, water, predators millions of years old. This wasn't a heroic battle. This wasn't an honorable death. This was slaughter, pure, primal, terrifying. Bruce Wright concluded his report with these words, 1,000 men entered the Ramree swamps on the evening of February 19, 1945. 20 emerged on the morning of the 20th. The rest became part of the ecosystem, consumed, forgotten, lost in mud and water. This is the greatest disaster inflicted by animals in military history, and the most terrible night I ever experienced. The Guinness Book of Records recorded approximately 900 men killed by crocodiles in one night. The record stands to this day, and one hopes will never be broken.